Hey everyone, welcome to another SAVI resource webinar. On our Get Savvy today, we are going over 8 myths about Social Security benefits for veterans. I'm super excited to have our guest today, Ms. Lisa Herring. She is an expert in this arena, so she's going to give you all of the wonderful facts and information about how to go about this process and do it properly. But before we get started, just going over a little bit of housekeeping. For you guys that are joining us on our webinar, thank you so much for registering. If you'll notice in the area below, there is a Q&A box. I definitely encourage you to put your questions in there. We will address all questions at the end. So save those questions. We'll make sure that Lisa has a chance to go over them. For anything that we're not able to address on the actual webinar, we will make sure that we send it to you as a follow-up in the email with this recording. If you're joining us on Facebook, thanks so much for chiming in. Whether you're joining us live or doing this during replay, please utilize the comment box below to address any questions that you may have. Again, we'll be paying attention to those. We'll make sure that Lisa gets them. And if we have an opportunity to follow up with you, we would have to do it by registration only. So you'll notice on the bottom, there is a website. You can go ahead and register there. You'll get notified of all of our upcoming webinars. You can get access to resources through our organization. So I definitely encourage you to sign up. www.savivets.org/veterans, and that is plural. So SAVI is a nonprofit organization that's dedicated to clarifying VA benefits for veterans and the organizations that support them. We work directly with actively transitioning service members. So that means 1 year pre-separation to 1 year post-separation. And we're so excited to share all of this wonderful information with you guys. So without further ado, Lisa, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and get us into your incredible presentation.
Okay, great. First of all, thank you so much, Adrian, for having me here today. I really appreciate the opportunity to do some educating with regard to Social Security disability benefits. It's just something where there's a lot of misunderstanding. So I am just trying to figure out how to get this up. So sorry here. Hold on one second.
And we can see your screen, Lisa.
Okay, I'm just looking at the first screen. I don't see actually what it is I'm supposed to be looking at. So sorry here. Hold on. Slide 1. It says I'm on slide 1 here. I apologize. Okay, there we go. Technology, not my forte. I'm really good with Social Security disability, not so much with tech.
And just to remind you, Lisa, you can use your arrow keys at the bottom of your keyboard as well.
Yes, thank you so much for that.
No
I appreciate
problem.
it. So anyway, I'm very happy to be here. So who am I? So I am a, first of all, mother of a combat veteran. Hence, certainly in part my interest in being a resource to the veteran and military community. Have a number of veterans in my family as well. And I'm a retired Social Security claims specialist. So I worked for Social Security. My job there was to help people file the best possible claims. And of course, many of those claims were disability claims. So I'm particularly interested in making sure that veterans and transitioning military folks have the information they need about these benefits. I became disabled myself and had to leave Social Security, or I'd still be there. I really loved my job, but I had to leave in 2014 because of my own disabling conditions. So I certainly understand what it's like to find yourself in a situation where you can't do what you did before, and maybe you just can't really do any kind of a job, at least for the time being. So very sympathetic with folks that find themselves in that spot. It's very stressful, okay? So anyway, of course, I got Social Security disability for myself, and I started helping folks, particularly veterans, get their Social Security disability benefits, because here I am with a skill set and I felt like I really needed to be useful. So that's what I started to do, and here I am today, still doing it. So let's talk specifically about some of these myths and misconceptions that veterans and people in general can have about disability benefits. I'm just on the tech front here. I've got some of this on this screen is actually blocked for me. Hold on one second. Okay. So first, and I have to just kind of cheat here and look at my paper because part of this is actually blocked up and I can't see it. So one of the first myths that people labor under is that SSDI is a government handout. SSDI is the program for folks who have worked, which is typically, veterans have worked, they've served in the military. So that's the program I'm going to focus on. There is another one at Social Security, but we don't need to talk about that this evening. So it is not a government handout. SSDI stands for Social Security Disability Insurance. So that should be your clue. It's actually an insurance program. So you pay into this program with your FICA taxes when you're working. And basically those are your insurance premiums. And if you become disabled, you're filing an insurance claim with the Social Security Administration. And of course, they're paying you your money back. So just to clarify that. A lot of veterans think that it's maybe a government handout or they're somehow taking something from another veteran. And that tends to make them not want to file for this benefit. But I'd like to assure you that's not the case, okay? It's an earned benefit. Okay, this is a tricky one. So I have seen actually in a lot of veteran groups and, veterans, meanwhile, they're trying to help other veterans, but they give out some information that is actually incorrect. So, as I've said, I'm not the Social Security disability police, so I'm not going to run around correcting everybody, but I do like to put it out there as sort of an educational thing so that people really know the truth behind this statement. So what'll happen is a veteran will come into a group and say, hey, listen, does anybody know if I might be eligible for Social Security disability? And somebody will say, when's the last time you worked? And if this individual says, well, I stopped working 6, 7, 8 years ago, then the response is you can't file because you haven't worked 5 out of the last 10 years. Actually, they have it partly right. So generally speaking, you do have to have worked 5 out of the last 10 years, but it's not the last 10 years in relationship to now, or even in relationship to when you're filing. It's in relationship to when you stopped working and became disabled. Or, sometimes people stop working and they don't become disabled until a little bit later, but it's in relationship to when you became disabled. So, stop. If somebody says something like that, stop, think about it. Okay, when did I become disabled? And did I work steadily, in the basically 5 out of the 10 years prior to that? That rule, it has some leeway in it with folks that are very young. So in their 20s or whatever. So there's a little leeway. But generally speaking, you have to have worked 5 out of the 10 years prior to becoming disabled. Okay, so hopefully that clears that up. Oh, this one. Everyone gets automatically denied. Absolutely not. Okay. The average national approval rate, at least in 2018, which were the most recent statistics that I could find, for initial claims, meaning first time somebody files, is or was 35%. That is not good. That's not a good approval rating, but not everybody is denied. So please understand that there are people filing for Social Security disability, and this is typically not veterans, who really aren't disabled. They're not going to meet the criteria. Now that's not, as I said, normally that's not veterans doing that. So people will get denied if they don't meet the criteria. They'll also get denied if they're not cooperative. Again, that's probably not veterans, but there are reasons that are good reasons why people can get denied. But I also discovered working at the Social Security Administration, because I had a particular workload there, that a lot of claims were getting denied needlessly. What do I mean by that? I mean that they should have been approved. Had they been properly filed and properly prepared, and properly handled, they should have been approved. And I discovered that because I had the nasty workload of being the only person in my office to process, not decide, process all of the denials for my office, which was thousands upon thousands of denials. And I got curious. Why are these claims getting denied? Particularly when I looked at veteran claims, and particularly when I looked at veteran claims where these individuals maybe had 100% rating at the VA. They were getting expedited claim processing at Social Security, meaning they were getting a decision in half the amount of time. And you would think, rightfully so, that these are folks who have a significant amount of things, going on with them, either from a mental or physical standpoint or both, and probably a significant amount of evidence. So why were they getting denied? So I started really looking at these claims. And I also had claims, could be a civilian, where I actually did the interview. And when I did the interview, you can't help but sometimes with some people, because it's so obvious, say, well, this person, it's going to be a slam dunk because they are obviously extremely disabled. And then sometimes those claims would come across my desk as denials. So I got nosy and curious about why this was happening. And when I started to investigate while I was still working there, I really started to see a pattern. And much of it had to do with medical evidence not making it where it needed to go. So there was medical evidence. As I said, these people probably would meet the criteria, but the medical evidence simply wasn't making it, wasn't getting where it needed to go. So that's something that is fixable, entirely fixable. So, that would have bumped the percentage up of people being approved if people, knew what they were doing with that. Okay. You can't get approved without an attorney. I also see this a lot. Now, I will tell you that this is perpetuated by attorneys because it just is. It's good for their business. But statistically, it's absolutely not true. And I'm not saying that people don't get approved with an attorney, they do. But you don't have to have an attorney. You have a right to an attorney at any point. You certainly can hire one, but it is not something where you are not going to get approved unless you have an attorney. So I saw claims that were approved at the initial level, the first level of appeal, second level of appeal, and even beyond that without an attorney. That's possible to do. In the first and even the second stage of the process, so if you do get denied and you do need to file an appeal, those first two stages, there really isn't anything for an attorney to do short of basically filing a third party online claim for you, and filing online is not the best way to file. So again, you absolutely have the right to hire an attorney, but you don't have to have one. Okay, that brings me to filing online is the best way to file. This is perpetuated by Social Security themselves. I have some sympathy for this. On the one hand, having worked there, I do understand that the Social Security Administration is extremely stressed to the max. It's only gotten more so since I left. So they are short-staffed. They are underfunded by Congress, and they are desperately trying to save money and keep people out of their office. And that's what serves them best. But, now that I don't work there anymore, honestly, that's not best for the claimant. That's not best for the disabled person filing a claim. So when you file online, there is a lot of information that can be missing from the claim. And I mentioned here, of course, you can see on the screen One of the reasons is that as a claims specialist, I was trained in making observations about disabled people. And those observations had to be documented in the claim. And those observations did get taken into consideration, even though I'm not a doctor or a psychologist or anything like that. I was kind of the eyes and ears for the person making the decision on the claim. So those observations are just one reason why online filing is not good and actually in person is best. Although ironically, we're dealing with a situation right now where it's probably not best to go into the Social Security office at this very moment because of the coronavirus. But generally speaking, filing online is not the best way to file. I understand it's appealing, it's convenient for veterans. A lot of veterans don't want to be in public and in crowds, and I'm sympathetic with that. But really, a lot of information is missing when it's an online claim. Okay, if you get SSDI benefits, you aren't allowed to work. Not true. So once you are collecting your benefits, as it says here, Social Security actually has a very fair and very reasonable process to support you to go back to work. And they don't just yank your SSDI check away from you. You get a trial work period, you get an extended period of eligibility, and eventually you can lose your benefits, but hopefully you're to the point where you're actually sustaining some kind of significant work and you're able to support yourself. And as everybody probably realizes, you really can make more money working than you can getting SSDI. So the Social Security Administration really does support people to go back to work. They encourage it. They don't turn around and say, oh, you must have been faking your disability. It doesn't work that way. There's a great pamphlet which you can get right on the Social Security website called Working While Disabled, and that sort of explains that entire process. And as a matter of fact, I'm in that process right now. So I have started to work a bit, and I'm still collecting my SSDI benefits, and eventually I'll work my way off. So, but it's very fair and reasonable. All right. SSDI is only for people who are deaf, blind, or missing limbs. That's not true either. And, I see in the veteran community, it's really tough because veterans are trained to drive on and suck it up, and somebody's always worse off than they are. They're looking out for their fellow veterans. And like I said before, don't want to take anything away from somebody else that really needs it. And there's a lot of misunderstanding also regarding disability. Folks who have an obvious disability kind of get more respect. And folks that have what I'm going to call invisible disabilities, tend to kind of think that people don't take them too seriously. If they look fine, well, what are they doing filing for disability? But there are very significant disabling conditions that can really interfere with your ability to work that you can't see. So I just encourage people, please don't look at the person next to you. Think about your own situation. And I really don't know any veterans that would prefer to just not work and not be a useful, productive member of society, at least from their perspective, and collect a benefit. That's not something that veterans are striving for. Usually they find themselves in a situation that they've just been pushing and pushing and pushing, and they just can't push anymore. And that's the people that I come across. So basically, if you file for SSDI, what you're saying to Social Security is that you are too disabled to work due to your conditions or engage in significant work for a minimum of a year, or you have a condition that's going to result in death. But let's just stick with, it's going to be a minimum of a year. So you're not necessarily going in and arguing that you're going to be disabled the rest of your life and you have some doctor that wrote a letter that says so. You're not doing that. You're simply saying, look, my conditions are severe enough and limiting enough at this point that I'm either going to be severely limited in my work, or I'm not going to be able to work at all for a minimum of a year. And of course, for a lot of folks, they've already been out of work, maybe for a few years, some of the people that I deal with. So it can be physical, it could be mental, it can be both. PTSD was actually added as a potentially disabling condition as far as Social Security is concerned in 2017. So there are many conditions that veterans suffer from that are quite relevant for SSDI benefits. Okay, this one. This is a tough one. I think many veterans feel that if they file for this benefit, it means that they're giving up or quitting. And I have to say, I'm not a veteran, but I felt that way myself, even though I knew better. It was just very, very tough to just bite the bullet and fight and file, excuse me, for the benefits. I sort of was in denial. I sort of deluded myself. Oh no, I'm gonna, make it back from this injury. I've made it back from some other injuries, and it just wasn't happening. So, as I said before, people people can make a lot of money, more money working than they can on SSDI benefits, and most people, not everybody, but most people, and certainly most veterans, um, feel better to be active, working, supporting their families, being a contributing member of society. So I see a lot of veterans who just really wait way past the time where they should have filed for these benefits. And it's just, it becomes a situation where they have so much more added stress, either from a financial standpoint or just a mental standpoint. They really would have been better off if they just said, look, I need to file for these benefits. I can go back to work at some point, maybe, but for now, I can't. And I also have seen a lot of veterans lose out on benefits that they could have been getting and could have reduced their stress that way. So I encourage veterans to think about getting SSDI benefits as a reset rather than as giving up. Okay, and that's pretty much what I have to say, and looking forward to seeing if there are questions.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Lisa. That was amazing. And let me just go ahead and stop this. Okay, so we do have a few questions. All right, so first and foremost, I have full SSDI based on my VA disability x rays. They told me that the amount that I receive is the same for all who are fully disabled, and I have to be reevaluated in about 4 years. Is that true?
It sounds like this individual is actually talking about VA benefits, not SSDI, but maybe I'm wrong. So there is a reevaluation process that the Social Security Administration has where they do review people. So if somebody is on SSDI, they do get reviewed occasionally. How often that review is depends on a number of things. It depends on their age, it depends on the condition, whether somebody's expected to recover. Certain conditions are, really permanent. Let's say this wouldn't be a veteran, but let's say somebody has Down syndrome. Okay, that's an individual that's not going to come up for regular review because they're not going to get better. But let's say somebody goes through cancer, they could go into remission and they really could be in a situation where they could go back to work. Going back to work can trigger a review also. Um, Social Security doesn't have percentages for disability like the VA does. You're either disabled or you're not. But the amount of money that someone gets paid is different person to person because it depends on their work history and it depends on the taxes that they paid in. So when this person says that they were told that everybody gets the same, that's what was leading me to believe that maybe they were talking about VA benefits, but hopefully that clarified Social Security disability benefits.
Perfect. Thank you. Now, the next question that I have is what does DSS look for to diagnose PTSD? I cannot get the VA to recognize it thus far, so I'm curious to know what DSS wants to see to validate.
Okay, so the Social Security Administration has something called the SSA Blue Book. And in the Blue Book, which you can access online, so it's not a secret, um, all of the criteria, so a listing of all of the potentially disabling conditions, both physical and mental, with the criteria. Understand that the criteria for Social Security disability can be quite different from the criteria for VA disability. In addition to that, there are conditions that the VA considers disabling that Social Security does not. As I said, PTSD was only added actually to the Blue Book in 2017, crazy as that sounds. So the criteria is different. And the VA is not, unless you're going after, let's say individual unemployability, the VA is not focusing on whether your condition stops you from working, okay? But for SSDI, it's all about inability to work or severe restriction of work. So it's connected to work and ability to work for SSDI. But the criteria is in the Blue Book, so you can read it. It's actually online.
Perfect. Thank you. And let's see. I think that's all. Oh, I got one more question.
Yeah.
Is individual unemployability a permanent GSS compensation?
No. And I would love to see the law change on this. And I've actually had conversation with a number of veteran organizations. I would love for some veteran organization to get behind this because to me, it's really insanity to have one federal agency say this person is unable to work. And then this individual has to come over to another federal agency and argue that they cannot work. I would love to see a law in place. I think it's been proposed in the past, but hasn't been successful. That anybody that gets individual unemployability with the VA automatically gets SSDI. But currently, that does not exist.
Thank you for clarifying. All right. I think that's all the questions that we have for now. Like I mentioned, for anybody that is joining us live, feel free to plug in your questions in the comments below, and we will absolutely address those afterwards. But make sure that you register so that you can get the recording as well as the responses. And for everybody that has joined us today, thank you so much. For everybody that's on our webinar, we appreciate you guys registering beforehand. Again, you guys will get the full recording that you'll have access to so you can reference all of this great information later. And Lisa, before we take off, where can people get a hold of you?
They can find me on Google, Side by Side Solutions LLC. They can call me 888-882-2855, or they can email me at sidebysidesolutionsllc@gmail.com.
Perfect. Thanks again, Lisa, for joining us. Thank you, everybody, for chiming in. We definitely appreciate it. And again, don't forget to register www.savivets.org/veterans, and you'll be the first ones notified about our upcoming resource webinars. Take care, everybody, and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.